let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel, and today I'm going to be starting a brand new series covering the Friday the 13th franchise. I'm going to be kicking it off with the OG Friday the 13th, released in 1980. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Friday the 13th is basically a ripoff of Halloween. After the success of Halloween, you know, money started coming in for that movie, the highest grossing independent film at that point in time, and Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller, they both saw those numbers and they were like, we can do something similar to that film. And this is basically the product of that. They got some backers for the film, some private investors, and they had a budget of $500,000. And Sean S. Cunningham, all he had was the title of the film, Friday the 13th, the scariest movie you'll ever see, or something along the lines of what that tagline was. And we are here today, 45 years later, and Friday the 13th is an iconic franchise. It gave birth to Jason Voorhees as a horror movie villain, and you know, also his mother, Pamela Voorhees. What else can you say about it? It's a film that I will say I respect more than I enjoy. I am not a Jason or Friday the 13th fanatic. I would say I enjoy, you know, Halloween, then Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Friday the 13th. So I'm not as in love or enamored with this franchise as some of you are, most of you are. I may be in the minority, I don't know, but I can say that I respect this series. I can respect this franchise more than I actually enjoy it. The basic premise of this film is you got a group of young teens or young adults, I will say, preparing to become counselors of this summer camp, and one by one they are getting picked off by this unseen assailant who was on the campgrounds, and you are down to the wire with the final girl of this film, Alice, and it's revealed, spoiler alert for a 45-year-old movie, the killer is revealed to be Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer. She's killing basically for her son, Jason Voorhees. He drowned at Camp Crystal Lake in 1957 because of counselors' neglect. They weren't paying attention to him. It may seem like a simple premise, because it is, but this movie made a killing at the box office. This movie made $59.8 million total at the box office, making it a huge success. And during my research, I was surprised to learn that the OG Friday the 13th held the title as the highest grossing film in the franchise until Freddy vs. Jason was released. I can't believe it. I was like, what? OG Friday held that record for that long? But yeah, it was the highest grossing slasher film of 1980, and it was also the 18th highest grossing film of that year as well. So let's get into it. As far as what I liked about Friday the 13th, I do like the camp aesthetic here. It's a place in the middle of the woods. You know, you have nowhere to go. These people are basically here in the middle of the darkness, you know, in a camp in the middle of the woods, you know, and law enforcement can't make it in time. You know, the camp setting is very creepy, it's very eerie, and it works for this film. The effects here are great, obviously. You know why they're great? Because we got Tom Savini in this film, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Savini, he handled the effects in the making of this film. He designed little boy Jason here, and the kills, they're great for the time. I will say the effects are starting to show their age. You can see the fake prosthetics on the actors, like when Pamela is chasing the character of Annie through the woods after she leaps from the Jeep. Fun fact, that was not a stunt double, that was the actress herself jumping out the moving vehicle. But after she jumps out, she's running through the woods, and you know, Pamela corners her against the tree and, you know, slits her throat. But that prosthetic, you can see it. You can see the fake rubber neck. And also Kevin Bacon's kill, even though it's iconic, even though I love that kill, you can see the prosthetic, you know. So the effects here are great for the time, but watching in 2025, you can see the effects pretty clearly. But it doesn't take away from the magic that Tom Savini did with these effects. He did an amazing job. That's the case in any horror film that he's in, you know. He's just a special effects maestro. He did an amazing job. He did a fantastic job with these effects. You know, even though they're starting to show their age, they still hold up somewhat here in 2025. Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees here, great performance. Obviously, she's the most experienced actor in this film. she basically took this role for a car. She was looking to buy a car, and this script came across her, and they were going to pay her a certain amount of money, enough to get her new car at the time, and she took this role for a paycheck. So easy payday for her. You know, once we get her performance, you know, even though it's towards the end of the film, she shows up as Alice, starting to discover all the dead bodies. She runs out the cabin, and Betsy Palmer, you know, Pamela Voorhees shows up, the creepy smile on her face. You can immediately tell something's off with this lady. When you see her, she goes from like 0, from caring, to like 100 to killer mode. She just goes off on a tangent and then starts to just become aggressive. That switch comes on. That's what Betsy Palmer brought to this character, and she instantly became iconic. The POV shots here in this movie, they work very well. Basically an inspiration from Jaws, you know, the perspective of the shark in the water. You know the shark is there, you know, when you hear that music. And that's another factor here, the music done by Harry Manfredini. The score here, awesome, iconic. You know, you have the sound effect here. You know, you have the mix of music here, signaling that the killer's nearby, with the POV shots from the killer. It makes for a great watch. Even if it was taken from another movie, it works here very well within this film. And it's very unsettling, and you know these characters are in danger once that sound cue kicks in and you get the POV shot. So those two elements here, they mesh well together and they work. As far as what I'm on the fence about Friday the 13th, Jason's absence. Obviously, Pamela Voorhees is the killer in this movie. But if you're a newcomer, someone new watching these films for the very first time, they may be like, oh, so Jason's not the killer. We get his mom in his very first film. Yeah, that may be unfortunate to you, but you know, it is what it is. It's just the way the movie went. Jason was never intended to be the killer, ladies and gentlemen. He was never meant to be the prominent figure of this series, of this franchise. I don't even think this was supposed to be a franchise anyway, but with the success that this movie had at the box office, they had to continue this franchise some way, somehow. And so why not Jason? You know, even though it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, the absence of Jason to new people or newcomers of this series may be a little confusing, especially if you expect to see Jason out the gate. It's still a watchable movie without Jason as the killer, you know, even though Jason appears in this movie. And finally, in the mix section here, the acting is a little amateur. Like I mentioned, you know, you have Betsy Palmer, who's really the only experienced actor here, and everybody else is just going through the motions. I think most of them were like from stage plays or whatever. I guess this was their first time being in a feature film. Not that you should be expecting Oscar level acting here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a B movie. This is a low budget slasher film. You know, can't hire A-list actors or big names. You know, gotta work with what you got. As far as what I didn't like about the OG Friday the 13th, there's no character development here. There is no character development within any of these characters. These people are just here to be killed. They are just meandering through this film, in my opinion. They just going through the motions until it's time for them to get offed by Mrs. Voorhees. And like I mentioned, it's amateur hour, and it is. These are not established actors. With how these characters are written throughout this film, it kind of falls flat. I just don't really care about any of them. To be honest, I don't care about these characters like that. Even Alice, our final girl, you know, played by Adrienne King, I don't think she's iconic. You know, the only iconic person from this movie would be Mrs. Voorhees and little boy Jason toward the end of the movie, as he jumps out the lake.
It's got a death curse.
But any other character here, I can tell you anything about them, including Alice herself. Also, the pacing here, this movie takes a while to get to the kills. So you are really watching a movie, like I mentioned, with just these characters just going through the motions. I like movies especially slasher movies, I like them to get to the point, character development, story exposition a little bit, getting to the kills, and you get the big battle at the end. That's what I like. That's what I look forward to with these slasher movies. And in this one, the pacing is just ooh, you know, you got certain scenes here that go on for way, way, way too long. Like, why are we watching Alice make coffee and then her barricading the door? You know, I get it. I get it. They probably had one shot to do that. But again, it's like, dude, there is no reason for these scenes to drag out as long as they are. I don't like the pacing of this movie at all. The final battle here is just terrible. When Pamela Voorhees lets the mask come off and she reveals that she's the killer and starts to attack Alice and have that chase scene. The chase scene, it's alright. It's fine. It's just a basic slasher movie chase scene, you know, she's breaking into the pantry trying to get Alice. It's like Alice knocks her out and she runs. She hides again. And Pamela Voorhees finds her, and you know, they have a little tussle. Alice knocks her out. Pamela Voorhees is down. Alice runs again. It does that 3 times. They finally get on the beach with a horribly choreographed fight. Like, this movie had no stunt coordinator. They could not afford one. So Adrian King and Betsy Palmer had to just make a fight, and it sucks. I'm sorry, it sucks. The fight has no stakes. You don't feel any stakes. It's just 2 women rolling around in the sand until you get Alice running towards the machete, picks it up, and then the music kicks in. That's the only exciting thing that happens within the final battle. You know, slow motion starts to happen. Pamela Voorhees has that shocked expression on her face. Then Alice raises the machete and takes her head off. Cool ending, but terrible build up to that moment, to that one moment. Terrible build up, terrible fight. Another thing that I don't like is killing a live snake. Like, Tom Savini, what the f, bro? Like, he literally asked a friend if he could borrow a live snake, and then they killed that snake in the movie, and that was somebody's pet. What? But again, that's just something that I find not cool, man. That's wrong. I may be making a big deal out of it, but it's just something that I had to bring up here, because that's just messed up, man. And finally, guys, I find this movie boring. This one is like one that I will probably never watch again. I watched it for this video, for me to make this video here. You know, it takes a while to get from point A to point B to point C, and then the ending. It's like, I just find this one boring. It gave us Pamela Voorhees, gave us Jason Voorhees. I do love the ending, the chair jumper ending. You know, after the final battle, Alice is in the middle of the lake in the canoe. You get that music playing over, and everything is very tranquil and peaceful, and it's just lets the audience guard come down, and Jason jumps out of the lake and takes Alice down with him. That's a cool and iconic ending. But that's really the only thing I would say check this movie out for. You know, and I do love that scene in the hospital where Alice is, you know, explaining to the cop, like, there was this boy in the lake, he pulled me under, where is he? Did you guys find him? And the officer looks at her like, we didn't find any boy. And then Alice drops this line here.
Then he's still there.
You know, I like that moment. That works. The kills, the death of Pamela Voorhees, and the chair jumper ending with Swamp Little Boy Jason, only things I would recommend. But everything else about this movie, it's just a bore. Just a bore. But ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts and opinions about Friday the 13th. Let me know what you think about this one. Do you agree with some of my takes here or my thoughts on this film, or do you just hate it? You know, I don't hate it. I just think that there are other films in this franchise that does what this movie does or is trying to do way, way better. If you are a fan of this franchise, let me know. If you are excited for me to cover this series, you know, I'm just trying to do what I can, man, with this channel. My opinion on these movies kind of varies, you know, but that's with every franchise, am I right? But like, comment, subscribe, and hype this video up if you want to. Check me out when I cover Friday the 13th Part 2. And also, if you haven't seen my previous videos when I was covering the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, check those out as well. Fair warning, I called this movie amateur, but those videos are very amateur in their own right. So, still trying to get a hold of this YouTube thing. But yeah, guys, until next time, I'm Bran. Thanks for watching. Peace.